Today, I would like to talk about how the story listening method is effective for absolute beginners and how to use the story listening method effectively. The answer is to provide optimal language input in a safe environment for students and then gradually provide more advanced language input. Comprehensible input alone is not enough, as Dr. Krashen said in 1982. And again, he said, not all comprehensible input is of equal value. And so just because something is comprehensible, it does not mean it is the best, it has the best value. Comprehensible input needs to be rich, abundant, and compelling at the same time. Okay, so um, these are the 5 questions people have asked before. And one is it possible to use the story listening method to teach absolute beginner students a foreign language from the first day? And I say yes. But as we may want to discuss later, it might be different with different languages and different people and things like that, and how long it will take. But then I think it is possible. Number 2, don't we have to teach basic vocabulary before we start telling a story? And we say no. Number 3, will they understand the story? Um, yes, they do. And number 4, I think they do. Okay. Because all I have done is using English and German language to Japanese people. And so I have not done with the Chinese language to the people from Turkey and things like that. So I don't know. You can start investigating those things. But as long as I have experimented, yes, they understand the story. Is it effective? Oh, yes, it is. Do they learn? Oh, yes, they learn, or they acquire, they remember. Number 5, what activities does story listening method use after telling a story? And the answer is none. We don't use any. We don't need to do any activities to reinforce the words that we used in the story. They will acquire new words easily when they are interested in the topic and when they understand what the words mean, what we say. So you might have already noticed, but the keys are if they are really wanting to know what you're saying, and also if what you're saying is understandable, comprehensible to them. Okay, yeah, I did that. Okay, so I'd like to talk about this recent evidence. It was not really, really recent, about 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Um, I have a colleague in Japan who teaches at the public junior high school, and he teaches from the 7th grade to all the way to the 9th grade for 3 years. And he got to know how to tell a story using the story listening way, which means tell a story using comprehension aiding supplementations. And so he learned, he got acquainted with that. And then he began to tell stories to the 7th graders in Japan. The 7th graders are about 12 years old, 12 to 13 years old. And in 2020, when he did this study, the students had not learned English in elementary schools officially yet. So they might have been exposed to some English before somewhere, but officially they were zero beginners. And so he began to tell stories, and we did the study. He told a story before he told the story, he gave, I think it was 20 words on a list, and asked them if they knew all these words. They couldn't read the words, English words. So he read it like number one, pig, number two, mother type of thing. And number three, three. So he told the three little pigs. And then after he told the story, he gave the same test again. And then he, of course, scored them, marked them. And then 4 weeks later, he gave the unexpected delayed post test. And we figured out what the remembering rate was, or acquisition rate, or learning rate was. And the rate was very close to what other rates were, which were done. The study was done with the university students. The university students' acquisition rate or the remembering rates were from like a 0.17 to 0.25 words per minute. And the seventh graders, the acquisition rate was 0.21, very close, or very, sometimes it's even better than the college kids. And so I also went to the school 2 or 3 weeks later, and I gave a story. I told a story to them, unfamiliar story this time, because we thought maybe they did a good job because it was a familiar story, and they knew the teacher, and so it was a familiar story with a familiar person who told the story. So I went there, unfamiliar person, stranger, and I told a completely new story, the story that they didn't know. And we did the pretest. Again, the teacher read the words, individual word. And we did the post test right after I stopped telling the story. And then we waited for 2 weeks to have a delayed post test. And what we found was that the remembering rate was 0.19 words per minute. And so, again, we made sure that their students remember, just as well as these college kids who are experienced English students. And so that was the one of the evidence that we found that the absolute beginners or the beginners can understand the story, even though they hadn't listened to an English story before. But then they were listening to a story. They were listening to stories in class that semester, but was not very well familiar with it. But then they acquired. Okay. And so another evidence or another confirmation was that these students, he taught these students for 3 years, and so he kept telling stories and for 3 years, and 3 years of input-based curriculum. Although he had to use, because he was teaching in the public junior high school, he was requested to use a government prepared textbook. And so he had to use it. And he explained the grammar in Japanese and things like that. But what he did was he introduced the content of the textbook using a story. And so he created a story, and he introduced the content of this, whatever the story, the chapter had for the whatever the story that they had in the chapter. And he created a story, and he told the story, and then he explained the grammar and stuff like that. But these junior high school students who took input-based class didn't have any output activities, forced output activities. He did not have the students engage in speaking activities. He didn't have the kids engage in writing activities. Therefore, there were no error correction, and he also did not force students to memorize 20 words per week like he used to when he was teaching the other set of students for 3 years. He did stop doing that, and also he stopped giving homework. And so he didn't do forced output activities, error correction. There were no memorization tasks, and there were no homework for these kids for 3 years. But these three, the students who spent that way in junior high school for 3 years, they scored as well on the English proficiency test at the end of the 3 years as the students who spent more than 200 hours on homework and other forced output activities in error correction during 3 years of traditional learning. And so when a teacher provides optimal input and allows students to acquire freely in an environment where they feel safe from unjust evaluation, unfair evaluation, there is no need for activities that enhance learning as described above, like error correction and forced output and in forced memorization tasks and in homework. So this study with these seventh graders who spent this way for 3 years demonstrated the same result as the previous studies. I made a mistake. It's not just one study, but previous studies, the previous studies, okay? Input alone is sufficient. Okay, so what I'm saying here so far is that you don't need to do pre-teaching. You don't need to do um, uh, uh, output activities to have a students acquire the language, foreign language. The students who were who began to study English officially in a public school when they became 12 years old. Okay. Okay. So, in another evidence or another affirmation that I would like to introduce to you is that I've talked about this in different presentations um, before, but this is what happened. Slowly listening in German to Japanese college students, my experiences with the students who knew nothing about German. Okay, I was teaching different a group of students, junior college students, 18-year-old girls who majored in home economics, not English, home economics. They didn't like English. And I was also teaching um, other different universities, a different university, and I was teaching students who are not English majors. Okay. Now, these people, the young people, didn't know anything about German, and they were not interested in learning German particularly. But I told them that I was going to tell a story in German one day, and they said, "No way." But then I said, "You watch." I said, because these kids also didn't believe that they were acquiring English, because, like Dr. Gresham says, acquisition is so subconscious. You don't know whether you are getting better. And so every week they come to my class, they listen to me tell a story or two stories in English, and they enjoy it. But then there are no tests, there are no questions asked, and so they think they are not getting anything out of it. But then I said, I am going to show you that you are getting something out of just listening to stories. And so I said, I'll show you. And I said, I'm going to tell you a story in German and you will understand the story. And I said, you will probably learn some words, and German words, I said. And they said, no way. But then I started and I told a story. And I'm not going to tell you the story today, but I told the story for about 10, 15 minutes. Okay, so these were absolute beginners absolute beginners and all beginners or the people who knew nothing, and they could acquire stories, the German words. Okay, they didn't even have to be okay. So these students, um, they did not, they weren't even interested. They didn't have the desire, same thing, desire to learning German, but they sat there and listened. Okay, and what happened was, did I write here? Okay, I haven't. Okay, what happened was that I gave a test afterwards, after the story. I gave them a test, a list of German words, and there were about, I think, 24 words. And I said, I read, like my colleague, Japanese colleague, who read the words on the list in English. I read those words like number one, fata, number two, muta, no, number three, tochta, number four, uh, I can't remember, merchant or something like that. And then they would write down the Japanese definition for the words that they heard and the words that they saw on the list. And what happened was that they, for about, okay, most students did very well, but not really well, but about the average was about 7 words out of 24, which was pretty good, although it was just right after the listening to the story. But the thing that really surprised me then was that out of about 15 girls, there was one girl who scored 14 out of 24, when everybody else was scoring like between 4 to 10. She scored 14. So I said, "Wow, you did really well. Why do you think you did so well?" And then what she said was this. She said, "Mrs. Mason, you told this story last semester in another class, and I was there, and I listened to that story, and this time I remembered the words that you from the first time, and therefore I paid more attention to other words this time, and that's why I know more. I know the meaning of more words." She said. Now, because I was doing this about this was about let's see, 10 years ago, 7, 8, 10 years ago, because everybody was saying no, you can't tell a story and have the students acquire a language just telling a story, and so I was trying to find out whether this was possible, and so when I had the chance, I was doing this at different places and at different schools and different kids, different classes. And so this girl was in one of the classes and listened to the same story because I can't speak German that well, and so I always told the same story. And she remembered. Well, she didn't want to learn German. She didn't know there was going to be another chance that she was going to listen to German. But then after like 6 months or 4 months, she heard the same story again, and she remembered those words, and therefore she learned more words. Okay, so I think this is a good example that the beginning level students can acquire or remember the words from hearing a story that is spoken in a complete foreign language. Okay, so absolute beginners can acquire foreign language from listening session from the first day. They don't even have to be interested in the language. When they understand the story and when they are interested in the story, they will acquire the language whether they like it or not, regardless of their intentions. Beginners who have no interest in that foreign language can acquire the language as long as they understand the story being told in that language. So the most important part is that, like it's been always said, comprehensible input. So conditions for the successful outcome are a compelling story, because I told the story, which most 18-year-old young people would be interested in. It was a love story. And so it was a compelling story. And number two, comprehensible language. It was comprehensible because I drew pictures. And comprehension aiding supplementation. And for the beginners or the absolute beginners, drawing for comprehension aiding supplementation is a must. You have to draw pictures. And number four is this. This is, I think, is a very important part. No output, no error correction, no memorization, no homework. So the girl who scored 14, she didn't have any homework. She was not required to do any memorization. I, I gave no test, I gave a test, a post test, but there was no, well, there was one time error. No, there was no error correction because I didn't give them correct answers. Anyway, okay. So, ways to help absolute beginners experience success with understanding the story in a foreign language. So, number one thing is choose a story that they can relate to. Like I said, I told a love story. And so the girls were interested what would happen to this girl and the boy. But the father said, no, they can't get married because he was still a student and he was poor. But the girl's father was rich. And therefore the father said no. And so the boys cried. He was sad, and he said goodbye. And the girl also cried, and she said goodbye. And that was the end of the story. And so everybody understood. So choose a story that they already, okay. So they choose a story that they can relate to, or choose a story that they already know, like the Three Little Pigs, Jack and the Beanstalk, the Little Red Riding Hood. You tell the story, and they will understand the story, and so they will pick up the words that they think are interesting to them. You can slightly change the characters and flow of the story um, if you don't want it to be too familiar. And it is a good idea to change some of the parts of the story too. Like, for example, the Golden Key in the Grimm Brothers fairy tales is a story about a poor boy finding a box that seems like a treasure box. The original text says we don't know what was in it until the boy opens it. But if you say this, your story listening will be unsuccessful with beginning level students because the beginning level students' story listening needs to satisfy their guessing for better comprehension. So when a child finds a box, a poor boy finds a box, automatically the listeners want the box to be a treasure box. So he's going to be happy because he's a poor boy. The listeners want him to find a treasure box. And so uh, I changed that part of the story and let the boy open the box and find gold and silver in the box and take it home. And they are very happy they are very happy. He and his mother are very happy type of ending. So you can slightly change the characters and flow the story, or take an originally exist original take an already existing story that you think they will be interested in knowing the content. For example, King Midas. So you can use story and what did I say? A take an originally story that you think they will be interested in knowing. Yeah. So like you know um, Japanese students don't know anything about King Midas, but then um, I will I might the other day when I told this story to not young people but to adults, I talked about King Midas lived in a country called Phrygia. And I said there was another not country, but kingdom next to Phrygia, which was called Lydia. And Lydia is the country about 2,500 or 600 years ago, 2,600 years ago. It is a country who made the gold coins first. And there was this river called Pactolus or something, and this river, the King Midas goes there and wash his hands because he doesn't want anymore his golden touch. Yeah, um, and so um, and so I say things like that, and then it gives the listener some interest. What am I saying? The people who were listening to, they were not absolute beginners, but they were interested in knowing such information. Or you can rewrite the story in the language that they understand. And so I did rewrite a story called "The Wolf and the Seven Little Kids" for some students. So what you can do, what I'm trying to say here is, you can choose a story that they can relate to, and make it very very comprehensible or interesting. Okay, and when you are telling a story to beginning level or absolute beginning level students, a simple language for absolute beginners. Use common and simple words such as mother, father, children, one, two, three, house, garden, big, small, rich and poor, girl, boy, hungry, sad, happy, I love you, and I don't like you. Please give me yes and no, these words and phrases. Okay, for the first day. Um, okay, ways to help absolute beginners experience success with understand the story in a foreign language. Number three is expressive pantomiming with exaggerated facial cues. So you do gestures, and you show sad face and angry face, and you might start raising your voice and things like that. Okay, manner of speech. So, but we need to speak slowly, and we need to speak clearly. And the speech rate is about 40 to 50 words per minute for beginners. And number five is repetitive narrative concepts. So use stories that have repeated scenes, like the Three Little Pigs. The big bad wolf comes three times, and the teeny tiny woman, the whole story. We just keep repeating. This teeny tiny woman went to teeny tiny house, and teeny tiny woman went to this teeny tiny grave, and so when you do that, then the students, these words echo in their head even after they finish listening to the story. Okay, number six, two or three characters in the story. You do not want the lots and lots of people to come into the story when you are telling a story to beginners or absolute beginners. The golden key has only one character, a boy. The ungrateful son has three characters: a son, his wife, and his old father. The rose has three characters: a girl, a boy, and a mother. A tale of a snake has three characters: a girl, a snake, and a mother. And the snake doesn't say a word, but it just appears. The cat woman has only three characters too: a man, a cat, and a goddess. So it's very simple to understand. And the last thing is drawing. Drawing is essential for absolute beginners, but a simple drawing is fine. You don't have to draw everything. Only the faces of the characters are drawn. Okay. When you say, once upon a time there was a boy, you don't have to start drawing the arms and the body and the legs and things like that. You just write down the boy's face. If you need to show only the face, if you need to show what the stomach is, um, or I said, like this time, I was going to show you a story, but I didn't. So I shouldn't say like this time. But if you need to show what the stomach is, and then you have to draw the body part and draw a picture of a picture of a stomach in the body. But yeah, okay. When you're drawing, you need to draw at the same time when you're talking. You talk and draw at the same time. You don't stop and you put your back to your, you don't show your back to your students and concentrate on drawing type of thing. You are watching the kids, it's listeners, and you draw. And yeah, try not to stop talking and draw quickly. Don't concentrate on drawing, just draw quickly. And stick figure drawings are fine. It's good. Okay, where did it go? Okay. Okay, so what activities does story listening use after telling a story? No post story listening activities. If we have some time left, we tell another story. So, like I've got, right now, I have students, a 60-year-old man and his wife come to my class, and only 60 minutes. But then I cannot tell a very complicated story because they don't understand much. So what I have to do is I have to give three different stories. So they've been here only like 4 weeks, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Or, I mean, three times or four times. But they have already listened to like over 10 stories. And they're getting better in listening, which is really rewarding to see when when I can see that they are understanding. Okay, um, you can you can rewrite a story if the story is too complicated. You can delete some people, you can delete some scenes, and you can change the ending. There are lots of interesting stories on the internet, like a beautiful but miserable queen, rich but greedy king, pretty but cruel princess, orphaned and starving children, poor but merry huntsman, cunning and cruel stepmother, old ugly discharged soldier wins a princess to marry, compassionate and revengeful bird, handsome brother and ugly sister, daughter-in-law wants to kill her mother-in-law. So these stories are interesting stories, and they all want to know what will happen to the mother-in-law. Okay, so we can rewrite stories for your beginning level students, not absolute beginners, but you can, for the beginning level students, you can rewrite stories. Compelling content is like fishing bait. This is what I thought about fishing bait. When there is bait in the language net, fish are more attracted to the smell, taste, and movement of the bait and become hooked in the story. Rewrite stories that will attract the listeners. Okay. Um, Stories First Foundation, we rewrite stories for those who need easier texts. And yeah, if you're interested, go to Stories First Foundation. We have a project called Great Story Reading Project. This was the suggestion that Dr. Gratian gave to us, oh, I don't know, 20 years ago. And Claire Walter is the editor, one of the editors. She made it realize his dream, and she is uh, realizing this thing on this webpage. And Stephen Clark in Nagoya, Japan, he is a professor in Nagoya. He is helping Claire write stories, rewrite stories. Claire rewrote this Urashima Taro Japanese story, and she has already published different stories in German and Spanish and yeah, Rotkäppchen German and Autre Pistache. I don't know. This is French. Jessie Owens, this is English. So she has already published French and Spanish and German and English grade 8 readers. and they are free graded readers in simple French, Spanish, English, and German. So, isn't that wonderful? So, the conclusion: understanding story listening. Even an absolute beginning level students can understand the story, the power of story listening. Even children understand intent, emotion, and words. They can create stories themselves. They can lie. They can tell you a lie. A simple picture can convey the message to them. Even children, yeah, can guess meaning based on a partial understanding. They don't have to understand everything. Okay, so let's start understanding story listening. Even beginning level adults can understand the story. Beginning level adults can benefit from story listening also. Life experience aids comprehension because they have tons of life experience. Understanding through context and visuals. Adults can also guess meaning based on partial understanding. Story listening, the role in language acquisition is story listening is not a one time fix. Different stories, we need different stories, themes, and characters. Different stories that repeat the same high frequency words strengthen memory. So we tell different stories, but then the same words come up all the time. Like once upon a time comes every time. And I said, once upon a time there was a king. There was a king. There was a woman. There were two sisters. These structures come all the time, and so different stories that repeat the same high frequency words strengthen memory. And new words are introduced and explained in familiar contexts in different stories, but new words are introduced and explained in their familiar words. And so um, they learn new words and they review old words and all they are exposed to different language all the time. Understanding story listening, this is the part that I love the most, the universal text, universal method. From absolute beginners to advanced language acquirers, the same method applies. The same method, you don't have to come up with anything, the same thing, just comprehensible, interesting, rich, and abundant in a anxiety-free environment. Encourages gradual acquisition because we bring in longer and more complex stories and we introduce them to easy, simple texts to longer and more complex texts to read. Builds on previous knowledge and experiences. Okay. Conclusion: we can acquire any language with story listening at any level, but only under the condition that the input theory bases the method of SL. Yeah. So, but only under one condition. The input theory bases the method of story listening. Therefore, that's the reason why we don't do any post SL activities to reinforce learning. Okay, that's why we don't do any pre-teaching of vocabulary to focus on the words that the teacher want to teach. Okay, because if they don't understand it, they will get bored. If they don't find the story interesting, they will not pay attention. They will stop listening. So the keys are again comprehensible and compelling input. It's all about how interesting and understandable you can tell stories to absolute beginners. It all depends on you, how you can make it comprehensible and interesting. So, thank you for listening. This is the end of my presentation. And next presentation will be, I'm hoping that I can talk about how to rewrite a story, how to create a story, how to create a series of stories with the same characters. Thank you very much. Story listening, uh, the accents and pronunciation and conversational expressions, you know, little pig, open the door, let me come in, and things like that.
Hmm.
People say things like that, don't they? open the door. You know, my husband comes home and says, Billy, open the door. No, you can't come in. And then he won't say, I will blow your house down. But you people have any questions? Thank you so much. You know, I was talking to my son about this presentation tonight, and he disagreed with me. He said, he said, "Mummy," he said, "you students, Japanese students, understood German because they already knew English, and they already were familiar with story listening from you, and therefore, then the English and German are very similar language, and therefore they learned, Vater, Mutter, Tochter, Sohn, and all that stuff. But if you were teaching, Turkish people, Chinese, things might be different," he said. And he said he would, if he were listening to Chinese people tell a story, I don't think he would be interested in listening. And he said he won't be patient in in understanding and things like that. So, but I was talking to Chris earlier about this, and the reason why we're here together is because you can try it. The I don't know who you are and where you're from, but you can try it and see to and see whether you can teach Chinese to people in Turkey. And when you do a great job about making those story comprehensible and interesting, and then you never know, they might learn Chinese, right? So you have to try it and see whether it works.
So Dr. Mason and Dr. Krashen, we have a couple people raising their hands and to ask a question, and we have a couple of questions that have come through in the chat. So let's start with one from the chat here from Brandon. He says, thank you so much. Once the students can read independently, should the students look up unknown words, or should they just keep reading and listening without checking the meaning of the words they see but don't know yet? Is one more effective than the other? Thank you.
Dr. Crusher, you answer it.
I'll answer it. If they each time they see the word, they'll get a little more of the meaning, and they won't have to look it up. If they have a fair idea of what the text means, it's probably more efficient to just keep reading because it's going to come back, it's going to come back, and gradually they'll get the complete meaning. And this is how we have acquired 99% of our own vocabulary in all the languages we already know. I look up less than 1/100th of 1% of the words that I have acquired from all these languages. Give it time.
Great. So now, Richard, would you, or actually, no, Miran, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I have a couple of questions. The first one is about translating into the native language. Nowadays, I'm teaching in Iraqi Kurdistan, and I have been using story listening for, I think, 2 years. The students are really interested in translating into native language. I know, but to be honest, there are two types of learners: the young one and the adult one. The young one, they have no problem, even if there are no translation. But the adults, they think that they will learn it fast if we try to translate it. So I'm not sure, to be honest, about translating into Kurdish, because I have tried to translate it, and I see the results. They are really, they are really interested in translating, and they think after that, I get lots of feedbacks from the students. They all say translating the phrases and the sentences, it's a great work, and we have learned a lot from that. And the second question is about is for Dr. Beniko Mason, and how can we apply story listening into a flipped classroom, or let's say, do you have how can we make activities online for students so they can watch it, or they can maybe read it before the classes?
Okay. Can I answer the second question first, Dr. Gracian?
Go ahead. Yes, of course.
Okay. As I said, there are no pre-teaching of vocabulary or pre-teaching of a structure or anything before you tell a story. And you don't do any activities. When, let's see, um, when you tell a story, you say you use many different words, right? When you tell a story with a speech rate of like 50 words per minute, and with 50 words per minute, and if you are telling a story like 60 minutes, in my case, 20 minutes in one story and 3 times. But anyway, if you were telling a story for 20 minutes, it's like 1,000 words, right? 1,000 words in 20 minutes, yeah? Now, out of 1,000 words, you don't know what word or what structure or what pronunciation or what accent or whatever, spelling. You don't know what they are acquiring. When you have 30 students or 25 students, they are acquiring different things because they are all at the different stages of the developmental stage, and therefore you cannot give them an activity like if you start using a flashcards and say, this and this, and the flashcards that you chose are not the 1,000 words, but then only 20 words that you want them to learn, and then when out of 30 kids, the the words that the words that you want to teach, out of 30 kids, there may be only 10 kids, 10 children, or 10 people who can answer the 10 questions or 20 10 or 20 words that you want to teach. But then the other kids have acquired other things from your uh, the input. You know what I'm saying? And therefore, it doesn't make any sense for doing all sorts of activities afterwards. And it's also very unfair to a lot of kids. Do you understand? And
Yeah, sure.
so it's so much better when you don't give them such a pressure or such a pressure, anxiety. When you give them activities, they feel like they have to learn those words, and then it's like a forced learning. It's like they are required to do this, and so if they don't do it right, uh, you know they are going to be judged, evaluated, and so it's it's not a good idea to have all those activities. Just tell another story and have them just enjoy listening to stories, and have them just freely acquire whatever they're ready to acquire.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's my answer.
I have a
Thank you so much. I do
on that.
appreciate it.
May I comment on this?
Hmm.
One way of convincing yourself, if you're a teacher, is to try it yourself. The last 2.5 years, I have been doing lots and lots of easy reading in Spanish just to see what's happening. My goodness, I can now speak Spanish. I haven't talked to anybody. I haven't read very much in Spanish, just reading these easy books. I'll tell you about them. I haven't studied vocabulary. I haven't looked up a single word. People I know quite well who knew me in the old days say, Steve, your Spanish is so much better now. What are you doing? I'm reading lots and lots of easy graded readers.
Yeah,
They're
that's true.
so interesting. I don't want to look up words. I'm interested in the story. So the project that Dr. Mason talked about, what Claire Walter is doing and others, I think is exactly the solution to this. By the way, if you're interested in Spanish, I recommended the books of Adriana Ramirez. I've never met her. I talked to her a little bit on the computer, but I don't know her. Her books are so good. I want to turn the page and see what's going to happen next and get the next ones. So we can solve this by producing lots and lots of easy, really compelling reading. Again, Dr. Mason said this, we come down to the fundamental idea. We acquire a language when it's comprehensible and extremely interesting. It's compelling. Those are the two things. So I think we need more materials like this to help each other and to help our students. There.
Mhm. And you talked about translation, yeah?
Yeah.
You know, oh yeah, you talked about older people who'd like to who'd like to see the translation. You know, because we all are older people who we are so influenced by the behaviorism. You know, we need to study this, we have to practice this, and we have to know the right answers and things like that. And so what we need to do is talk to them, you know, about the theory and about the evidence. You know, they might, you know, you might think this is important, but it isn't really. And look at this and look at that and show this in different evidence, different research papers, or your research papers. You know, you need to do some explaining, orientation to those people. Um, that helps. And then when you start when you tell them those things, and some people might, older people might say, well, when you say that, that makes sense to me, because he says, you know, my older the senior adult senior citizen student said he used to read a lot of books in Japanese, and therefore he did very well always in the subject of Japanese. And then he said he didn't have to study for the test on the Japanese subject, he said. And so he understands the value of lots of reading, he said. And so when you talk to them, they start thinking about their past experiences, and they might start agreeing with you. And once you have somebody on your side, and then he might start talking to others, friends, and helps you uh, understand what the acquisition way is. And this is the way I think we should go, everybody on the planet. You know, I think, I think the look at this. Look around you. Um, um, in Japan, they say over 95% of the high school kids, 12th graders, are still at the elementary level of English, although they had been studying English for 5 to 6 years, hard at home and at school and at cram school, but then they are still at the beginning level because of the language, because of the method they have been forced to use. And so we need to change this whole thing into story listening and GSSR base, at the beginning. And then they can do lots of other things after they reach their intermediate level. Then they can start doing a creative writing, and they can do debating, and they can do a lots of different things that they are teaching right now. But then I think this stage has been ignored, and I think this stage has to be incorporated in school curriculum, so that they can become all, not just 1% of the students, but like 95% of the students can reach the intermediate level, so that they will be able to keep getting better at English or whatever the language. But I think right now, I think all the people in Japan, in the world should become English users, so that they can get the right information um, from the whatever the source that they choose. But lots of information has been given in English, and so I think that's That's what I think. What do you think, people?
So we have a question from, or actually, Sina would like to have a question.
Hello, Sina.
Hi, Dr. Mason, and hi, Dr. Krashen. It's an honor to speak with you both. Well, I have actually several questions, but I'm not going to take up much time. I'm just going to start by saying again how the whole idea of compelling input has revolutionized the way I work, and not only in terms of the energy of the classes and the efficiency and effectiveness, but also in financial terms as well. So I have to thank you very warmly. And my first question relates to kids, actually, because I've been very enthusiastic in, try this method. I mean, story listening with kids. I think that we've talked about this with Dr. Mason before. But I've been trying to do this because the way I do story listening with adults has been incredibly successful, and I've got incredible feedback both in German and English. But with kids, it has been not, as successful. And I'm gonna tell you what kind of feedback I received from kids.
Okay.
I did a demonstration for both parents and the kids the first day that I wanted to introduce the method, and they were, everybody was so excited. And as we moved along, I did story listening for them, especially with the stories that I had learned from Dr. Mason. And then I realized the kids were not that interested in those kinds of, stories. I don't know why. So I
Sorry.
switched to stories that we have a somewhat mini library of children's books at home because we're both very interested, and I started to pick out books that were suitable for their age, and I started to modify the stories for them based on those children books, but not much success either then, because the feedback that I got, and I'm telling you this, this is the feedback that I got recently, and it has been like 4 months that I've been doing this. As soon as I begin the story in English and I want to make it comprehensible and interesting, and I make it very theatrical, so I think I do a pretty good job there. But as soon as I speak English and start this story, the kids go under the desk and say, "We want to play. We don't want to listen to a story." And I don't know what I should do. And I'm really interested to see if there are. Sure, there are, but I want to know what are the subtleties and what are the adjustments that we have to make when dealing with children.
Hmm. I used to teach kids, small children, um, like 5-year-old and 7-year-olds. Um, but they didn't do that to me. I wonder why. First thing I said, they came to my classes be, not because they wanted to learn English, because their parents wanted them to learn English. And so they came, but I did talk to them. I said, "You're here to learn English," I told them. And I'm going to tell you a story in English. And all you have to do is enjoy. I will try my best. And so you cooperate with me. And I kind of talk to them. And do you talk to them like that too?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Both at the beginning and during the
Mm,
semesters.
mm. Well, I don't know. It's about discipline, I think. Thing
Mm.
how they are brought up at home. Maybe they can maybe um, they may they might act like that at home too. I don't know. Um, there are, yeah, when you think about it, even among the college students, you know, they they might have some kind of different problems. Like they I don't know, but um, when the stories, however, when the story is interesting, even when they don't like to be in the classroom, don't they usually listen when the story is interesting? Have you really
That's
tried?
the idea.
Yeah, like a I had a friend who was teaching Spanish to children in America, and she told me there was this girl who never liked to, never really acted very well in the classroom, and she always acted like she was sick. But then when the teacher, this my friend, was telling a story which was quite interesting for the kids, I guess, and then she just stood up and she wanted to listen from the back of the room, she said. And so maybe the stories that you're telling might not be all that interesting. Then maybe we need to look for a really, really interesting story or short story, or I don't know how old your students, little children are, but interesting short stories and
Mhm.
comprehensible. How's that? No?
Yeah, sounds good. I'm gonna have to try different things and see what I get.
Mm.
Well, would you like to go to other people because I have other questions as well, and I
Well,
don't want to,
Sina, I have a question for you.
Sure,
Yeah, have you tried to acquire other languages through reading?
absolutely, yeah. I'm trying
Well,
to acquire Italian and French right now.
and what are you doing? What are you reading?
Well, I have devoured all the graded readers in Italian that I found on the internet, but
Yeah.
it's been very, very effective. And now I'm doing other things. I'm trying to, with the help of my friends and the internet and the AI, I'm trying to translate the stories that I already know
Okay.
into into Italian. And actually, what's been very effective and also very interesting is that the stories that I have already told other people in German and in English into Italian, and it's incredible. It's just so interesting that I still remember the words that I first encountered in Italian. Very highly advanced words.
Well,
But
you're
with French, I'm trying to, this is the first book that I got in French, and this is not a graded readers, but something that I found interesting in the bookstore, and I'm trying to get my head around it.
this is the problem. If we can generate a lot of interesting, compelling books for beginners that we like and we share with each other, we'll all get better. Our colleagues will find out and they'll get better and it will spread. My frustration now, I know we are all a category of people called language lovers. We like languages. If we have a chance to acquire a language, we'll do it just because we enjoy it so much. We are in the small minority because the public thinks the only way to do it is through conscious learning. For the public, acquisition does not exist. It's the only thing they know about. And we have to at least find success among each other and spread the word person at a time, a good book at a time. I can only name a few good authors that I've liked in these languages, and I'm a language lover. I'll do anything. I just love to find these things and read them, just like you guys. So in in Spanish. Right now, it's Adriana Ramirez. I mentioned her name several times on purpose. In Chinese, in Putonghua, it's Haiyun Lu, who's done a whole lot of very, very wonderful books, and Linda Lee as well. This is what we want, Ned, encourage these people and tell each other about it. We'll get better, and then everybody else will get better. This is the easy way, I think. We need more easy, comprehensible, extremely interesting books.